Welcome to the Jersey Podcast. I'm your host, Darian Kelly, and today I have a very, very special guest, Jason Robinson, founder and CEO of Playbook Five. Jason, man, how's it going?
Man, it's well, man. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, man, everything's good. I've been down in Houston now for a couple weeks, 7 to be exact. So I'm kind of getting used to the flow of things down here. But everything's good, man. I can't complain.
And it's a pleasure. I know that we met about a month ago, so just wanted to just catch up and just see like how's things been since the first time we met into now, like what's been going on.
Yeah, man. So what brought me to town was the Diving Sports Tech Accelerator. So that's been great. Being able to connect with so many other great founders from the region, but also just to get the hands-on experience or hands-on training rather from so many smart people. We've had mentors from the Rockets. We've had mentors from Techstars. We've had people come in from all of the Houston Dynamo, all the major sports organizations you can think of from the region to help us, massage our businesses essentially for readiness within the sports technology space. So that's been great. I've learned a lot. I feel like it's one of those things where you think you know a lot, and then you go to a situation like this, and you're just like, oh wow, like there's just so much more there. But it's been great. I've taken it in stride, and I think that once we conclude the 12 weeks, we'll be in an even better position than we were and are right now.
Definitely. And just to, start from the beginning, that was just more of an update, but start from the beginning, tell me a little bit about the story behind, Playbook Five. Like how do we get to this point, you would say?
Yeah. So Playbook Five is somewhat of an amalgamation of like my life experiences, my family's experiences, my interest in technology, and obviously my interest in sport. So my grandmother founded an elementary school when I was younger, and all my cousins and myself, we all went there. And my dad was a dean and a football coach. My mom's a high school principal. So I kind of grew up right in that, like, education, learning was a priority. And then sports was something that naturally was I was drawn to too. My dad being a coach, and he wasn't like, there's levels to this thing. Yeah, my dad was a very well-known coach in California and throughout the nation as well. So I just spent a lot of time around the game, and when you get access like that, you get access to tools too, right? So like, because my mom's a principal, because my grandmother had a school, like, I grew up kind of flipping through the books with all the tools and all the gadgets, and my dad playing around his office. So I think it just was when I got done playing and I found out about VR, this was like potentially the greatest tool ever created for education. And that's what got me excited about it. And then we started building. So yeah, I would say it's a combination of all the things that I care about, education, sports, and technology as well.
Absolutely. And I can definitely attest to growing up within that intersection of education and sports, just being from Baltimore. My mom's an educator. I have aunts who are in the education system, and sports was, I'm pretty sure you heard the old adages, you can't get on that field, you can't get on that court till those grades are right. So
Yeah.
education was always first. So I can definitely attest to that, having both sides, how important it is, because it's people think that when you finish playing sports, the lessons in there, if you don't go to the next level, but there's a lot of lessons that you can learn, beyond, your time playing sports as well. And education is, allows for you, I think, to bring all of those things together and show you how important those lessons are.
No, that's a good point, man. And that's just to touch on that a little bit, one of the things that we focus on at Playbook Five is teaching players how to understand like the mental side of the game opposed to the physical side of the game. Like there's so much more opportunity when you learn how to learn. Like it's more than just going out and running fast, catching balls. Right now we don't even have a ball in our platform. Like it's all about just teaching you where to be, where to look. I was actually talking to my dad yesterday, and he was telling an old story about one of his old colleagues, Coach Morris, Reggie Morris, who his son ended up was Russell Westbrook's coach in high school at Lusinger, and they're like a big basketball family back there. And Coach Morris would have this deal every year where like for the first 2 weeks they didn't even see a ball. Like didn't see it. Like there was no ball. Like for first, and my dad was telling the story kind of how his football players would always want to go out and play basketball, and then they quit because they're like, man, ain't no ball. Like Reggie ain't letting us use, Coach Morris not letting us use no ball. Right. So, but it just speaks to like, you know, and funny enough, he was talking about a team that year. They went into the playoffs and deep into the playoffs, and it's when you slow the game down and you understand the underlying factors, you know, without just the bells and whistles, you're in a much better position to succeed, in my opinion. So that's one thing we try to focus on with Playbook 5 is not, you know, not how fast you can run, not how high you can jump, not what your height weight is, but like, are you in the right position? Do you know how to think? Do you know how to make decisions? Can you recognize patterns? And that stuff is very, very important. When, especially as you start to get to the higher levels of the game, when the physical skills are pretty much ubiquitous, everybody's got them. Like in high school, you can get away with being the faster player, being taller. Well, you get to college, you got everybody's tallest player, everybody's fastest player, everybody's strong player. So how are you going to separate? The only way to do that is really through understanding the game and getting yourself in better positions to win.
Absolutely. And I can, you know, for me, just, you know, talking about the mental, when you talk about the mental aspect of the game of football, like I remember I got embarrassed in high school when my coach, shout out to Coach Dom, one time he made me get in front of the team. We had a team meeting and he was like, I want you to draw, I played receiver, and he was like, I want you to draw the routes. I want you to draw the routes on this play. And so at the time I was switching over to a new position. I never played receiver up until that point. And so I was not as confident. I was super shaky. And so when I went to go, you know, draw the routes on the board, I was drawing the routes as if like it was as if I was like learning how to write the alphabet for the first time. Like I was like in preschool. And he was like, see, if you draw your routes like this, you're gonna get out there and run your routes like this. You know what I mean? Or just whenever he would explain certain plays, we have team meetings, he would always say like, it depends, you know. And I think that just that, you know, that mental aspect is so key. And even when you talk about the story about playing basketball without a ball, like, you know, we don't think about like how we always think about the ball and you know, the highlights, but not necessarily the mental aspect of the game. So I think you touched on, you know, some pretty key, good key points when you talk about that. More so for you know, you playing football, you know, tell me about like sort of the you know, dig into the lessons that, you know, you were able to learn that has helped you, you know, on this path of, you know, as a CEO and founder. Like what are those key lessons for you that transition from football to now?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, and the four things that I always point to are teamwork, discipline, trusting the process, and integrity. And I'll break those down one by one. From a teamwork perspective, you know, I was both blessed and haunted to have a dad as a coach, right? And it was great. But the downside of that is, you know, you're seen as a teacher's pet, or you're the coach's son, or every little bit of success you have is, you know how high school can be and kids can be like, oh, okay, that's only happening because your dad is the coach. So when I was younger, and also even before I got to high school, you know, a lot of my Pop Warner coaches, they would target me because of my dad. Like it's competitive, you know what I'm saying? Like he's a, you know, 30-year tenure guy at one school that everybody wanted, but no matter what, you couldn't, like, he just figure it out. My dad's just, you know, a great coach. And, you know, a lot of the envious stuff would happen. And sometimes it was subtle, sometimes it was not so subtle. But anyway, growing up like that, I think my brother and I both, like, we learned that to get ahead of that, as my dad always says, and stay 2 steps ahead of it. So I learned as a quarterback to just be giving and get other people enrolled, right? Like there was times when I remember I'd give the ball to somebody, even though I knew that it might not have been the right play, but it was about getting them their hands on the ball, because I'm the quarterback and we run an option. So like, and I'm the best player on the field, you know what I'm saying? So like, I can take the ball and get cracking, you know, but that's not scalable from a championship perspective, because you know you're going to need your teammates. Like no matter how good you are, like either you're going to get tired they're gonna double you, they're gonna account for you. Like you have to have other people involved. So I learned very early that like first just as like a get pressure off my back to get people going. But then it was like, okay, this actually works. Like we can win this way. And because I played varsity as a freshman, when I got to my junior year, you know, I lost my whole team because they were seniors. So now all the kids that were on JV came up to varsity. And I like, again, you know, Aaron Grimes, Devin Claiborne, some of my better friends and teammates ever, but they didn't know me. You know what I'm saying? All they saw was me out here like scoring all the time. So I had to like literally that season, I had to become a different type of leader where it was more about getting other people involved in the process. So like, and that's the same way it works in technology, or at least with my company and we're running a business. Like you have to, it's not like you humor people and it's not fake, but it's just, it works. Like getting people to buy in. If they can feel like they have a hand on what's happened, have a say about what's happened, they're more likely to act and perform at the highest level. I'll never forget, I had a chance to meet, I'm kind of going off here, but Chris Martin from Coldplay, when I was personal training. He's one of the gym all the time. And we go to, you know, just grab coffee, grab tea. And one time I asked him, I was like, yo, like, tell me about Kanye and Jay-Z, right? And he talks about Kanye and he's like, you know, Kanye is like, everything's set up, everything's proper. He just needs you to come in there and lay his vocals, like everything's done. Whereas Jay-Z kind of goes in and like nothing's done. And he spends so much time getting you going. Like how like what do you want to do? And then, you know, and he basically, Chris told me like that was his way of getting the best out of people. Because if you feel like you're helping Jay-Z, like you about to go crazy. You know what I'm saying? And then Jay just put his piece on. So I think that teamwork is very important. Discipline, you know, you can't achieve anything. I shouldn't say anything, but you can only achieve but so much without discipline and having like a relentless pursuit of that thing and that you want. And there's going to be days when, you know, you don't feel well. There's going to be days when, you know, you're feeling down and out, whatever it is, but you got to still like do something. That doesn't mean that you have to go out. And I always tell the people, kids now, like players, like when I say do something every day, sometimes that's just sit on the couch and visualizing. That doesn't mean that you have to go out and run 8 miles and run a 4.2. Like sometimes it's just giving it that one thought. Like a thought is way more, it's so powerful, but you have to have the discipline to do that every single day, day in and day out. And then eventually those things stack up. And then trust in the process. You know, quick story. So hopefully I'll make it quick, but when first year I got to Boise was the year we beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. And, you know, every year we fill out our pyramid of like kind of like a spinoff of John Wooden's Pyramid of Success, but we had our own pyramid and we do it as a collaboration within the team room. And we get to that top stone essentially. And it's like, yo, what do we want? And I remember Coach Peterson asked, like, the seniors kind of drive the conversation because it's their team. And I think it was Jared Zabransky, but he was like, we want to win a BCS game. Like, we want to win a BCS game. And it was like, I remember we went back and forth, we deliberated. Like, some people were like, that's a little bit too audacious. It's not practical. You know, let's, and then we ended up settling on putting that thing up there. And we did that. I say that to say, like, us choosing that as our goal gave the coaches permission to develop a process that would get us there. And all we had to do and did was trust the process. And a couple months later, we beat Oklahoma, and now what is regarded as one of the greater college football games ever, changed college football forever. And it started with a process. And that I always talk about that story when it comes to trusting the process, because that was a turning point for me. You got to imagine being 18 years old and that happens, like magic happens. Like, it changes your life forever, because you know you just need to break it down, make the goal, and then execute on the process. So yeah, man, that's I never let that go. Even to this day with Playbook Five, my personal life, it's all about the process. It's all about, you know, paint the picture where you want to be and then break it down to these pieces, and then just have the discipline to do those things all the time. And then the last piece is integrity. And that's kind of like I get that from my dad, man. Growing up, funny enough, the show All American is about a school that would oftentimes steal my dad's players. And you had like the haves and the have-nots, and they'd get people parents cars and get them apartments, get them jobs. And my dad would like always have this situation where he was fighting off people. And through it all, my dad never cheated. Well, I should say never cheated. I don't know him to have cheated. He didn't do it in front of me, and he never got caught. So who knows? But tried to operate with the utmost integrity, no matter what. Like, and I think that my dad would always say, like, respect the game and it's gonna respect you, right? Respect the game and it's gonna respect you. And I look at my dad now, somebody who has won 200 plus games, been to several city championships, put hundreds of players into the college and that ended up getting college degrees. Several players, even more dozens into the professional ranks. And he's relaxed. Like his life is good. His son's got a cool company. I'm sharing the knowledge with the next generation. And I like to think that that's because he respected the game, and even myself, right? Like the fact that I'm in this position to develop the next generation using the most innovative technology arguably known to man as it relates to education. I like to think that has to do with me respecting the game. Like I didn't cheat. I didn't cut corners. I didn't care about PEDs. Like I no matter what was going on, if it meant I had to do something that was outside of my integrity to get ahead, I just didn't play. And sometimes people don't, everybody didn't agree with that. But my whole thing was like, if I can't do it myself, without no additives, then it ain't meant for me. And I got friends and people that I know that have, taken a different route and gone about things a different way. And yes, they got success, but a lot of that stuff is short-sighted too. You know what I'm saying? Like what type of game you playing. If you really want to, have the game respect you throughout your life, you got to respect it. So integrity is something that I try to keep a part of my life even to this day. And as I build this company and move forward.
Yeah, and I think that it's so many parallels from what you said, from the accountability, teamwork, the being able to have integrity. We often even when you even start playing football or sports, like it never leaves you, as far as like whether it's you're doing conditioning drills and you have to touch the line, everyone has to touch the line, or we're running over all the way over, just holding everyone accountable, or being able to do things and have the discipline to do things when you don't want to do them. You get taught that as a young age, but I think that people forget how those things stick with you. You know what I mean? Those the discipline, the integrity. Like
you're conditioning your brain to think. So if you cut corners on the 200s, you're gonna cut corners in life. You don't touch the line, you're not gonna punch in on time. Like it shows up. So and people, oftentimes players, I talk to players all the time, my dad's old players, and they'll call me and be like, man, me and your dad we didn't really see eye to eye, but man, as I've gotten older, I see what he was talking about. And that's one of the cooler things that calls that I get to have. Because I was around for some of those things. And some of these dudes are my dad coaches, some hardcore, cats. And they got older and realized that like my dad he didn't hate you, but he was trying to prepare you for life with how are you preparing yourself and training yourself to move on a day-to-day. Like I said, if you cut the corner on the 200s, you're gonna cut the corner at the job. You're gonna, and it's not scalable, because see, in football, the consequence is just you run another lap.
Right.
In life, that consequence is you going to jail, or you getting fired, or you losing your wife, or your kids don't like you. So it's and you don't know that when you're young, right? You don't have that ability to just teleport into the future and see. But that's why coaches are so important, and that's why our mentors are so important, and that's why it's also important that young players and parents of these young players allow for these lessons to actually settle in. Because man, one of my dad's ex-players called me last weekend, man, and he's just like, him and my dad used to go back and forth. And he's like, man, your dad, like, I see it now.
Right.
I see it now. And it's my dad, I'm sure that feels good for him, but it certainly feels good for me.
Sure, for sure. And then also too, for you, just how, I guess for you, what has been, I guess, the toughest challenge for you, as a founder and CEO, and just talk to me about the process of how you overcame that particular challenge or challenges that you've had.
Yeah, that's a good question. Biggest challenge. One of the biggest challenges has been to, so growing up, man, I had my dad. I had Eddie Robinson, late great Eddie Robinson from Grambling State University was I had access to him. Also because of my dad, where he coached at, he oftentimes had a lot of great players, but when players would do their in-home visits and coaches would come to town, they sometimes have them in my house because they didn't want to go all the way into Watts. So one of the toughest things that I would say has been like taking this wealth of knowledge that, and then I played for Coach Peterson, Justin Wilcox, Jeff Cho, really, really great football minds, and taking that information. And, there's a saying in technology where you want to make it so simple a 13-year-old can understand it, right? That's been a challenge, right? How we've overcome that is working with a great team. That helps, right? Thankfully, everybody on my team doesn't have the same, some do, but all of them don't have the same level of experience that I have with the game and being around coaching. So I kind of had to, in order to get them on board, I had to first break it down in a way they could understand it, So I think that was definitely a challenge early on. A lot better now. We've been around for a minute, so we've gotten a lot of reps at doing it. But yeah, I would say just like taking all of these experiences, coach's son, captain at Boise State, ECS champion, like quarterback as a, starting on varsity as a freshman, going both ways, like just all these experiences, and really like making it succinct in a way that like, look, trust me because of this, and then putting that into a product that can actually scale and serve athletes.
Absolutely. And then I would say, what else, or what keeps you motivated, even with, the success you've been having? I know it hasn't, been, peaches and cream, from here to this point, but what keeps you motivated? What keeps you on your square?
The vision, like, it's big. We've barely scratched the surface of what it is. Barely. I have very big goals for both myself and the company. And, that's what keeps me going, that. And then also I'll say, like, the vision as it relates to our customer. Like, that's my fear. My fear is the game doesn't innovate at a pace, at the right pace, and future generations are not afforded the opportunity to experience all the cool stuff I did. Like, because high quality coaching is needed, like elite, and it should not be limited to the people who can quote unquote afford it. You know what I'm saying? Everybody deserves it. I meet friends all the time, and they like, I went to Boise State, so we number 3 team in the country, blase, and I'll meet one of my homies, Trevor. Trevor played at Princeton, and Trevor goes, remember the first time we met, he was like, man, I ain't play like that. And I'm like, bro, anybody who put that helmet on and strap up, you play. I don't care at what level. I don't care if it's amateur, semi-pro, Pop Warner. There's and that's not just football, it's any sport. There's so much commitment and risk that is taken by stepping into the arena. And if you make that choice and decision, regardless of what your socioeconomic status is, you deserve to have access to the best. And everyone deserves. And I think that in relation to the vision is what keeps me going, because now we have a technology that can do it. If we didn't have a technology that could do it, it's like, all right, but it's here. We built it. You know what I'm saying? It's here. Like, it's not, I mean, come on. Like, why wouldn't you want every kid's face in the world to have access to one of these headsets and the information that can help them go out there and play with confidence and with a high IQ. Because I know what happens, you know, from my own experience, and now we've tested what happens through our research projects. And, you know, your kids are more engaged. They enjoy the sport more. And we all know about the correlations between sports and academic performance. So when you think about that, even and who's impacted the most, you know, what cultures play these sports, you know, sometimes sports is the only thing that gets people to go to class. You know, the idea of being eligible. You know, in Jamaica, the NTFA, the National Tackle Football Association, Jerome Harriet, one of our partners, we worked with them. His brother's the head coach at St. Thomas Aquinas in Florida. You know, they developed American football there just to increase the graduation rates for among young men. Like high school. Like I forget the numbers, but the dropout rate is like absurd. And he started the foundation with the sole intention to just get people something that makes them and helps them want to play, or rather stay in school. So it's hard to stop when it's that, man. It's hard to stop. It's really hard. It's hard to care about too much about any pushback. It's hard to focus on hurdles. Because I know these guys, man. I'll tell you a quick story. One of my dad's former players, Leon Otis. So back in the day in the 80s, like I said, my dad ran the wishbone. In Nebraska, Oklahoma, everybody ran the wishbone. So my dad had a quarterback, Leon Otis, goes to Nebraska, and he was slated to start as a freshman, was having trouble learning both the playbook and schoolwork. He comes home on some like, man, I need a break. He gets killed in a drive-by. Like, and having my dad tell that story all the time to me as a kid, yeah, like I do it for Leon. Like I do it for cats like Leon. Like it's hard to stop when you've been so close to those type of stories. And that's just one, right? We all probably know about them, you know, whether they're as detailed and succinct as that story, but in some way or another, people, you know, my own brother, you know what I'm saying, went up to Oregon, came back, you know, life didn't work out the same way. So, and I like to think, and that has a lot to do with players' ability to learn. And if we can help them learn more and help them appreciate education, we can improve their lives. You know, it's funny, in VC, they talk about what's the lifetime value of your product. Like, you know, of course, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, because it's that, I don't know. Because kids that can actually learn to learn, what's the lifetime value of surviving?
Yeah, so, and I think that's a key point, because I think that when you think, well, for me, when I, you know, just growing up in Baltimore, I feel as though like I didn't really, coming up, there wasn't a lot of, like, yes, education was enforced, and, you know, we had different programs, but I didn't really see a lot back when I was younger, a lot of, you know, programs or ways in which education was connected towards technology, right? Or understanding how technology, you know, relates to something that, you know, youth actually care about, right? Like, which is sports. And I didn't really see that coming up. Now it's a different day because we have access to the technology. And you think about, you know, the kids of today, you know, they are, you know, everything's on an iPad, right? Everything is tech based, which is very different from how, you know, we grew up, right? We come from the, you know, go outside and play outside. We play, you know, throw up tackle. We'll play, you know, outside, or we'll be on the court from the morning to, you know, to night. Now it's all, you know, kids don't even want to, you know, rarely go outside. It's a chore for them to actually get off of the iPad. So I think that when you talk about bridging that gap and having access to, you know, those, you know, helping people or helping youth have access to those, you know, to the technology and making that connection with something they love, which is sports. Like, they may not, you know, watch Sports Center, you know, but they know, you know, how to, you know, get on Instagram. They see memes, they have TikToks that are revolved around sports. So being able to bridge that gap, from a technology standpoint, I feel like it's definitely gonna, keep them engaged and really change how they see sports, different from how we saw it coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a big point, man. We try to just meet them where they're at, right? Like stop trying to force a square peg into a round hole. When I was in San Francisco last weekend, had a talk with another founder, David Charlot, and we were talking about just like, books were innovation as well. Like, and that innovation had its pros and cons. Technology is no different. You can try to beat it, or you can just meet it. Right? We're not going to pry a phone out of a kid's hand ever. It's not happening. Like,
right.
It's like, it's not happening. So, with that being the case, how can we still keep them connected through that technology to the in real life moments they need? And how can we actually use technology to be a bridge, to getting outside? That's one of the things I love about it. It's like, this is not Ready Player One, where you just go into the headset and you're stuck in there and you're, no, we teach you just enough to have you want to go outside and do it. You know what I'm saying? That's the cool thing about our experience. And I would even say it's somewhat of a competitive advantage of our experience.
Definitely. As far as, was there any types of like books or like podcasts or like, things that you kind of consumed that were like really impactful in shaping like just your approach to, to Playbook Five, or just your approach to business? Like, were there any types of resources that you can like highlight at all?
Yeah. So Mastery by Robert Greene, and Robert Greene's kind of more famous for his book, 48 Laws of Power, which is also a great book, but oftentimes controversial. But Masteries is a book that, I used to try to read it every year and just give myself a refresher on it. Give and Take by Adam Grant is another one, and that kind of, it's more about just laws of reciprocity and learning how to deal with people. Transactions are a normal part of commerce and business, and helping you kind of understand how to deal with different personas within those transacting fields, or transacting events rather. Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore is probably one of the better. It's been very, very helpful for us. That book is more about, technology life cycles and how things become, how the iPad becomes the iPad, how the mouse becomes the mouse, and just how it just scales and grows. And that, obviously, for us being in a nascent industry, it has been very helpful for me to kind of understand how to plot different milestones on our roadmap based on where the market is and where it's trending towards. And then Know Thyself by Naeem Akbar, which is not a huge book, but a lot of those books, whether it be Naeem Akbar, Carter G. Woodson, W.B. Du Bois, like those books have just shaped me in so many different ways. And it comes to just, connecting with the source, you know what I'm saying? And like, America is a great place, but there's a lot of constructs as well. And to be able to look at things from another lens and assess with what I would consider and what Naeem Akbar would consider like an African-centered consciousness, has been helpful for sure.
What is some advice what's the advice you would give to your younger self, like starting out, like looking at where you're at now?
Drive slow, homie. Like for real. Like just taking time, being present, understanding that what's meant for you is meant for you, and you don't have to run. You running faster to it ain't gonna make it no more greater. You're only gonna miss out on the things that are on the way, which there's a lot of beauty in the journey and the struggle and in the struggle, to be quite honest. Like, so I think just presence, not being in such a hurry, slowing down, spending time with people. You want to make that call. Like, you want to write that letter. Like, you want to make a song, you want to make music, put it out. Like be present, because again, what's meant for you is meant for you. It's gonna be there. But when you get there, you can't reach back.
Mm.
You can't reach back and just say, hey, I want a little bit more of that. Nah, it's gone. The moment's gone. And my dad has to saying, I quote my dad this whole interview. It's like his interview. But we think tomorrow's not, he used to tell his players, people think tomorrow's not gonna ever come.
Mm.
And that's something obviously why I understand why people that look like us might feel that way, because for many of us, tomorrow didn't come.
Right.
But we have to have faith and trust that there will be a tomorrow, and operating from that, right? If you know that you're going, sports example, you're going to the league, like, because it's meant for you, like, how you gonna move in the moment? Like, that's gonna be there. It's the Sistine Chapel, right? Is you look at it, and I've never seen it in person, but obviously seen pictures of it. But it's huge, beautiful. They didn't just get up there and just start stroking.
Right.
It was one mosaic tile at a time, one grid 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 at a time, stacking those blocks that ultimately creates a masterpiece. You cannot create these mini masterpieces if you're so focused on what's down the road, right? The Rome Coliseum, right? There's this funny story I read, I forget where, but like, the Coliseum in Rome still grades out as one of the top public venues in the world.
Yeah.
Like, there's a score that's based on like flow and, seating and all these other things. It's all criteria. And it still ranks in like the top percentile in the world. And I thought about that one day. It was like, well, how did they do that? They weren't focused on a Super Bowl. They weren't focused on a boxing match. They weren't focused on capitalism. They weren't focused on getting this thing done for the Olympics. They just worked on building the best building every single day.
Right.
It being in the now. The pyramids in Egypt, no different. Being in the now. So like, just being present, appreciating that, and trusting that, like, it might take a long time. It might feel like it's taking a long time.
Right.
But that's the ultimate way to create meaningful outcomes, is to be present in what you're building today and not like being overly obsessed with the future. And you have to have a vision, like the vision so you have to have somewhat of an understanding of where you want to go, but you don't live there.
Right.
You gotta manage to see that, and then be able to do the things on a day-to-day that allows that to come to fruition.
For sure. And also to follow up, there may be a young entrepreneur, in the sports tech space listening to this conversation. What would you, just advice you would just give them on just navigating, just entrepreneurship, and just like, what have you learned? Like, what's that little piece of advice you could share?
Yeah. So you gotta, and this is kind of cliche, but it's true. You gotta love the problem you're solving and the solution. Like, you have to be obsessed. Like, this thing is hard. Like, it's very hard. It's very expensive. You're gonna miss out on things. The only way to keep going with all those things being true is to have a deep connection and passion for what you're building. So like, that's, there's a book I read early on when I was fresh out of school, Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week, which interesting title and interesting book. But one of the things I pulled from it was there was an exercise that like just kind of like went through this thought tree to figure out what you cared about, and where, and also where you're credible at.
Right.
And I went through that exercise, and that was kind of like the first time when I started to realize that I needed to be working in sports, solving problems and solving solutions, because it was the overwhelming evidence was that was something I cared about. So you have to care about it, because there's going to be days, I get doors slammed on me every day, probably like 3-4 of them, especially as we're fundraising, right? If you don't love it and you don't care about like this larger vision, it's abuse.
Right.
It's I don't know how long you can really hang in there. So I would just say, like, starting with that, and that's not to say you have to be like you know, everybody's not going to build businesses that come from their soul like me.
Right.
But there should be some level of connection to the market, connection to the problem, the connection to the solution, and the vision. And without that, though, you know, it's not to say it's impossible. You know, there's exceptions to every rule, but it's very, very challenging to get to that level without that love and affinity for the solution.
Definitely. So this portion of the interview is called like wearing the jersey. So these are more like, you know, fun questions, you know, aside from, you know, just your story and just entrepreneurship in itself. So I'm just going to jump right in, wearing the jersey. Coming up, you know, who was the you know, the football player that you admired the most, or who would you pattern your game after?
I wouldn't say I patterned my game after him because I could never, because he was too fast, but I respected him. Sir Parker. So he's one of my dad's players. He went to Texas A&M.
Okay.
He had a movie called They Call Me Sir. That was a Showtime original that kind of chronicled his life. And the reason why Sir Parker, you watch the movie and it will give more insight into it, but Sir had a tough upbringing. You know, it was not, there was many nights where we had to get up in the middle of the night and take him food, and he was in an abandoned building or in a trash can bin. And, you know, it never showed up. Like, he was a 4.0 student. He treated everybody with respect. Yes, sir. No, sir. Like, I just remember being around that guy in my early years, like, yo, like, you're a king. Like, nothing can break you. Like, nothing can break you. And, you know, Friday nights get here and he rip you. And he's the number one player in the country. 1995 was a USA Today Player of the Year, Sir Parker. You know, went through a lot of stuff, man. And just the way he handled it with grace, you know, and just resourcefulness, man. He would go to the mall and put headphones on and just like juke people in a rush hour. You know, he had this drill he'd do with my dad after practice. He'd tell my dad, keep the whole defense out there. And he tried to go from end to end without one of them tackling him. Like, you know, it just was like, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Like, his creativity was just on a different level. It didn't matter. Like, you know, and I always wanted to be like Sir, like, you know, and even to this day, man, he just, same way, same vibe. Like, it's just a man, like a resilient individual that is not going to let their circumstances define them. And, you know, that was the guy I looked up to the most, for sure.
Definitely. What would you say is your like favorite like pregame hype song of all time?
So we had this thing at Boise, and the bros will appreciate this, but like, so DJ Khaled, All We Do Is Win.
Ooh.
That was like,
that was right.
Like, it was like, no matter what color you were, no matter what like your favorite music was, that would come on during stretch, and it was like, and everybody hands go up,
right.
and then he's looking on the other side, and they like, damn, like, they ain't no cat, they ain't playing it, like, they about to, like, it's like facts, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, that was the coolest thing like ever, man. Just like, because that's what we was doing, you know. We won, my time there, we won 45 games, only lost 5. In those 5 games we lost were like by combined like 10 points. You know, like, we were just champions, you know what I'm saying? And that was like, when that song came on at home, we knew, like, we never lost at home ever. My class, at least, we never lost at home. And, you know, it's just, that came on, it was just like so real. It's like real life, you know what I'm saying? This is what we do. Like, you know, all we do is win, you know? So yeah, for sure.
Definitely. And my last question, I think I already know the answer to this one, but best stadium atmosphere you've ever been in that you can recall as a player?
Yeah, for sure. You know the answer. It's the blue. It's the blue at Boise State. I forget the name of it now. I think it might be called Albertson Stadium, but back then it wasn't called. It was just, we just called it the Bronco Stadium. Right. Yeah, man. Just you know, we used to, you know, back then we was playing, you know, they start tailgating on like Thursday. Like people try to get their spot. Like, you know, you wake up and you start seeing the RVs out there, and then, you know, game day, walking from the student union building, you know, cowbells, kettle corn. There's like this calm that happens right before the game where it's like everybody's kind of like, it's Boise, you know, everybody's kind of like just, you know, nice people. But then, man, we break that tunnel, and that horse come out, the Bronco come out.
Right.
And yeah, man, it was electric. Just the chants, the cowbells, man, the cowbells, bro. Like, man, the cowbells. Like you didn't want to be backed up against like in the end zone, like in the north end zone, the south end zone, and they get on you. They get on you. I can't tell you how many times I've seen like just false starts. We see false starts all the time. They call timeout, like, oh, make place get so loud. It's only like, I think like 38,000, but it felt like 100. You know what I'm saying? And they, you know, just loud and maniacal, and got the chance. And that's another Bronco, first down, you know, and Boise, stay. You got one side of the stadium say Boise, the other side say stay. Just, man, hey, just electric, man. Yeah, man, one of the coolest things I ever had to do in my life. You know, we really love that field. We appreciate it. You know, I was telling a friend the other day, I never ever saw people be so defensive about their home turf.
Right.
Than we were.
Right.
And a part of it was because everybody tried to write it off as a gimmick and yada, yada, blah, 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 all this other stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's like, all right, it's all fun and games. We putting 50 on you. We taking your head off. Like everybody, Oregon State, name it.
It didn't matter.
Fresno, name it. All that, you can talk all that.
Right.
From where you at. When you get to this blue, it's different.
Right.
It's different. And a lot of that has to do with the environment and the atmosphere that was created by the fans. So yeah, that's not, I don't think I'll ever have a, you know, an in-venue experience as cool as that. You know, obviously not playing anymore, but even just as a fan, like this is just crazy, man. It's just really dope, man. Really, really cool.
For sure. Well, Jason, I appreciate your time, man. It was a pleasure. I thank you so much just for your time and just encouraging me to go forth and do this platform. I know when we met, you know, you were saying, I was saying, oh man, I need a camera. And you were like, bro, you don't need a camera. You got a camera right on your phone. Like it's no excuse. And, you know, just, I appreciate how much you know, reassured how much, you know, we need, you know, platforms like this and, you know, just getting people's stories out there. So I truly appreciate you and just your encouragement and energy, man, for sure.
Already, bro. Already, man. Thank you for heeding it and for giving me this opportunity to share my story too. It's an honor. You know, I know you're going to do great things with this platform. So this will, I know this is going to live on as one of the early episodes. So I'm excited to see what it, you know, when you get to 150, 100, 200, and people still going back and hearing this one. It's going to be dope, man. So I thank you.
All right. Absolutely, man. Take care and good luck.